Hey everyone, this is Masa. Just have a disclaimer for this upcoming episode. This episode of Combat Connection the Day class introduces you to self-defense techniques that are for educational purposes only. There are no guarantees as to your individual ability to correctly apply this information under assault conditions. You are hereby urged to use this information with good judgment, common sense, discretion, and assume full responsibility for misuse. This is not a treatise on self-defense law. Self-defense law is an intricate combination of individual facts, state statutes, and case law. It does include nuances of defending your home, your property, or other domestic abuse situations, and any other individual state protections. No virtual instruction or content, no matter how well crafted or presented, can substitute for professional hands-on instruction. Self-defense training, especially training that includes knives, sticks, firearms, and other potentially deadly weapons, should always be undertaken responsibly and ethically, ensuring every available precaution for safety and injury prevention. Information presented here inevitably reflects the authors, owners, and instructors' beliefs and experiences under specific circumstances. Any content, instruction, or coaching provided through this podcast should be used for educational purposes only. Listeners are responsible for knowing and understanding all appropriate local, national, and international laws relating to self-defense, reasonable force, and the use of any and all weaponry, acting in accordance with all applicable laws at all times. Combat Connection does not assume any responsibility whatsoever for the misuse or use of information or instruction obtained from our posts, website, podcast, or other social media publishings. Nothing in these works should constitute a legal opinion, nor should anything we publish, say, present, etc. be treated as such. And with that disclaimer out of the way, here's our show.
Hey guys, welcome to Combat Connection, connecting all things combat. This is Masa, Luca, and Lo, and today we're going to be talking about self-defense and home defense. Let's get started.
So I've traveled a lot at night alone just for my job. Something that's really helpful is just being aware, standing up straight, not searching for things in your bag is super important. Also, usually if you're outside, like there's not great lighting anyway, so it makes more sense to look for things, in the building. Like if you're going to the hotel, like you don't need that hotel key before you enter the hotel. Just go into the lobby, find it there. Plenty of lights. And if you're just walking alone, try to get an idea of the neighborhood that you're walking through. I've accidentally walked through a number of sketchy places before just because I wasn't really paying attention to the surroundings. And running is very important. Cardio is very important, but if you use your eyes, you can just pay attention and kind of avoid those situations. And standing up straight, looking like you're supposed to be there and you're knowing what you're doing, just fake it and people will just kind of be like, okay, I'm not gonna bother her. This is kind of a crazy situation, but when I was in DC, a guy apparently came. I know this sounds so bad. I'm talking about awareness, and I had no idea this guy was trying to mug me with a knife. But apparently, he was trying to mug me with a knife, even though it was daytime and I was with a group of people. And I just, I kept going, had my shoulders up, just, good posture, just kept going forward. And, the guy was just kind of like, what happened? And that was that. Not saying you should just walk past people with a knife. Not saying you should go anywhere near anything that looks dangerous. But looking confident and just kind of doing your own thing can confuse people. And it can keep you safe.
So you just straight didn't notice a guy trying to mug you with a knife?
Awareness is something I'm very bad at. And it's something that I'm continually trying to work on. I do have ADD. It's very hard to focus.
So your tip for everyone is to fake it until you make it.
Fake confidence is basically the idea. If you fake confidence, people are going to be like, maybe not that person.
Okay, but hard to focus is one thing. This dude came up to you with a fucking shank and was like, "Alright, give me your money," and you just went, "Huh?" and just walked past.
Oh, my friend actually told me what happened. I was wondering why they didn't want to go to that area again. I was like, what? It's perfectly safe. Nothing has happened there.
See, this should serve as a warning. If any of our listeners think we know what we're talking about or what we're doing, let this be a lesson to you.
It's also a good lesson that there is always something that we can work on.
Okay, so there is something I want to bring up on that. Certain people have worse luck than others, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you've had an attempted mugging pulled on you once, it's safe enough to say it could have happened more than once. Yes. I want to know how many times in your life someone has pulled a knife on you and you've just walked off not knowing.
I wouldn't be able to tell you anyway because I walk alone a lot at night. So for all I know, this has happened many times And I don't know. So, like I said, the only reason why I knew was because a friend was with me and was just like freaking out. And I remember just being like, I don't know why she's freaking out. Everything's fine. And then I remember it was like, wait, why don't you want to go to the karaoke place tomorrow? And she's like, are you kidding me? Of what happened yesterday? I'm like, what? What happened yesterday?
What the fuck?
Which is why we are very much saying this is not necessarily advice you should follow. You
Yeah.
know?
We're
The-
just discussing. We don't necessarily know anything. This is just a conversation.
So,
yeah.
And the
Moss's
start of the
tip.
conversation is Masa doesn't know what the fuck's going on.
I
in
mean,
her
I have
life.
been in sketchy situations, and running has helped.
I don't like running. That's the thing. Everyone always said, "Oh, well, obviously you run away."
Okay, so one of those times I was being chased by a couple people, so I kept running until they gave up.
But what if you run more than like the? Okay, so clear that worked for you then. But 9 times out of 10, if someone's trying to start something with you, they're probably they probably think they have a chance. They're bigger than you. They think you don't look too able, something like that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I was
So-
super fat in college.
Group as well. Chances are at least one of them is going to be faster than you, if not all of them. So then you have to defend yourself in the end anyway, but you're out of breath from trying to run away from it. And that is why I don't like running unless there is already distance between you or you've got them on the ground or something away from you to give you that start.
So with the group of people, there was a fair distance between us, and I was going to a store anyway. And there have been sketchy situations where I actually knew what was going on and paying attention. And I have gone into stores to help kind of deal with that. And then
So you were like in a more public area where you were heading towards.
yeah,
somewhere
like
you could
there
go.
weren't people in the streets, but like I could run into a store.
That brings us on to our next point. If you do not feel comfortable, go into a public place. Meaning, if you're at a store and you step outside and you see a sketchy individual who is just staring you up and down, you just get a gut feeling. Trust it. Go back into the store. Wait a couple minutes. Or go into the store and ask a sales associate to escort you to your car. A lot of times, they won't care. They will walk with you to your vehicle.
That's if you have a vehicle. Because we can't assume everyone lives like 10 hours from any form of civilization and drives everywhere.
Yeah,
It's
so
not-
that
it's
actually
not my
reminds me
fault
of when
that
I
I
was in
live-
Boston. Sorry, what were you saying, Lo?
I was telling him it's not my fault that I live in a rural area.
So, I'm actually going to talk about the opposite. I was in Boston, and I didn't. I mean, some people do have cars, but generally those garages aren't exactly close by. So even if they do drive there, they're probably a decent distance because parking in Boston, one, it's hard to get, and two, it's like $20 an hour. So you don't really park right in the city. So it'd be quite an exercise for the person to just walk you there. And then, of course, there's always all of this understaffing issues. But one time when I was in Boston, I noticed that there was this lady. She was just following me. And I just kind of had this gut feeling, but I was like, okay, maybe I'm being paranoid. And so, I kept walking. I'd make some weird turns. It's Boston, so there's always people there. But she kept following me. And I did go into a store because I was like, okay, I'm going to wait. And I waited and I waited. And I was probably in there a good 15, 20 minutes in this tiny little Trader Joe's. And when I came out, she was still there. And I was just like, well, what the hell am I supposed to do now? And so what I actually ended up doing was because I had one of those cards, like the T cards for the Metro. Basically, you put money on it, and then you can just swipe and go through faster. So that's actually
Oyster
a what? Oh yeah, an Oyster card.
yeah.
Yeah.
So in England, London specifically, we have Oyster cards. So to get on any public transport, a bus, a tram, a train, underground, you just put money on this card at the local, what you guys would call a convenience store, and then you just tap it on the scanner in the public transport, and you go on.
Yeah. So in Boston, it's called the T. You just call it the T, like that's the train Oh, Charlie card is what is actually called, but the system itself we call it the T. So that's actually what I did. I used my card. I was like, I think there's enough because I just wanted to get away from this lady, and so I scanned it and I went through the turnstile, and that was it. She didn't follow me any further, probably because she didn't have a card on her and or didn't want to pay to rob me in the subway where there CCTV cameras.
So
Yeah, that makes sense. Just make it
So
more
the-
inconvenient for them.
that's
Mm-hmm.
another point. You're walking and you think that someone is following you. Make enough turns where you are pretty much making a circle. That way you can know for sure. If you're walking and someone is behind you and you take a left turn, they take a left turn, and then you take a right turn, they could very well just be going the same route as you. So one thing that I've told a lot of people before, and I've heard it from a lot of different people, is if you feel like someone is following you, be it on foot, in a vehicle, etc., make enough turns to actually box yourself in. So if you take a left, take another left, and another left, and another left, or mix it up a bit so you are making a full circle. That way you can know for sure, hey, this individual is following me. I need to find somewhere public. I need to be where people can see me. Because if you start freaking out, getting yourself scared out of your mind, and then it turns out that little old lady Susie is just on her way to the grocery store walking the same way as you, you're stressing yourself over nothing.
Well, yeah, I crossed that street several times, which
Yeah, I'm just
wouldn't
bringing
make
this
any
up.
sense. Oh no, I agree with you. I'm just saying, like for people who don't want to go in a circle, just cross the same street several times. Like they might cross one or two if they're lost, but if they continue to follow you as you keep doing that, then there's something up.
I almost got in a fight that way once.
What?
So I was heading down to a store. I was going to go to apply for a job in a shop, and there was this dude walking in front of me. I noticed he'd looked back at me a couple of times, and then he took a turning up a different street to me. So I was kept going straight, but he took a left turning up a different road, and then he doubled back, so he was now following me. So the first thing in my head was, okay, this dude's been looking at me, then he's turned up, so now he's following me. That's sus. So I made a turning, followed me on the turn in. So then I stopped outside of a store to pretend like I was reading what was in the storefront. And this dude, whole ass, just stopped right in front of me, turned in my face, and just went, "What the fuck is wrong with you?"
I mean, did he know you at all?
No. This was just a fucking dude that decided to follow me down the street for like 10 fucking minutes.
And what did you tell him?
A lot.
Well, you see, this dude was like half my height and half my weight, so I replied with the same, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" And he walked away.
Okay.
Aw.
So that was that was fucking funny.
I mean, yeah, sometimes just shouting at them will get them to go away.
I didn't even fucking shout.
Ah.
I was like, I
But
was
going
half
off of that point,
laughing,
shouting
honestly.
at someone, going off the point of shouting at someone, if you have someone who is going to rob you, right? They are
Yes.
more likely to choose you if you are you're an easier target. The
Mhm.
wolf will pick off the sick sheep before it'll pick off the healthy specimen. So when
Yep.
you exit a building, stand up straight, make sure you're looking all the way around. Don't sit there and focus on things like we've already touched on. You need to scan your surroundings and make sure. If Luca wouldn't have been paying attention, he wouldn't have known that this guy was being sus, as he called it.
Yep.
I'm
It's a
sure
good
that
thing
would
I'm
have been
paranoid
more
as fuck.
surprise. But now, since he actually noticed this, he was halfway expecting something, right?
Mm.
Knowing is half of the power. So whenever you exit a building, immediately look around. If you see something that bothers you, go back in. If you're walking to your vehicle, walking to the bus, don't look for anything. Make sure you stand up straight, push your chest out to make yourself appear larger. When someone is speaking to you, if you're not getting a good vibe, well, even in general, when someone is speaking to you, you don't have to sit there and yell at them constantly, but speak to them in an authoritative tone.
Yeah.
Don't be sitting here hunching down, speaking very, very, very light. It's not going to do anything for you. When they're
Another
talking,
thing.
speak to them as clearly as you can. Yes, how can I help you? Not yes, how can I help you? That makes you seem like an easier target. You need to speak to
Another.
them. You are clear. You know that they have bad intentions. They need to know that you are not an easy target. That
The thing
that
with talking in general though is an issue. It can be a bit of an issue. There's this martial arts and psychiatry author, and I can't remember his name, but he wrote on the theory of the conversation, which is how I think he wrote is like 60-70% of confrontations start is the conversation. If you are picked out as a target, someone is not going to just jump you. They're going to interact with you and try and get in close enough to you if they have a weapon so that they can pull it. So the first thing you need to do if you think someone is suspicious and they're trying to talk to you is make sure there is a distance between the two of you. If they're asking something, you need to try and get out of that conversation quick. If they're like, "Do you have the time?" Just no, sorry, because not. Yeah, hang on, let me check, and then they pull a knife and stab you and steal your phone.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say that was something we were warned about in college. People
And
ask for
something
your
else
time
they'll
and you pull out your phone. So exactly.
mm, something else they'll do. They'll stop you if you're in front of a car or a building. They'll try and that's when they'll stop you, so then you don't have room to back away.
Or
So
if you
make
just
sure
came
you
from the
always got
ATM.
opens and make sure you know there's no one around because I saw this one example of it. They talked to this guy and they talked to him in front of a car and they tried to pull a knife on him. He backed to the side, he moved so he didn't go into the car, but the guy had two friends come up and grab him anyway. So you need to be really fully aware whenever someone
so
is interacting with you in a suspicious circumstance, you don't know them, it's late at night, there's not people around, they're way too close, they seem to be and like have some sort of suspicious. Their body language is aggressive. Their tone is not fully natural, neutral, whatever. You create distance. You look around. You get out of that conversation quick.
all right, this is actually a story that happened. This is something that happened to me 2 years ago. So I was at a local fair, right? So lots of events going around, everyone's having a good time. I was hanging out with a buddy of mine who's a year younger than I am, and we had seen some of the booths. We were walking around, and all of a sudden, this random chick came up, and she asked him something about Jello. It was out of the ordinary, and a lot of times when someone walks up and they ask just a random question, they're doing that to get you kind of startled and confused. I noticed that she had two other people that kept looking at her, so I kind of just circled around instead of stopping in a standard position, and I started watching them. They got fairly close to my friend, and I talked to him for a bit, and they left. All three of them had gotten close to him. They left. I talked to him afterwards and said, "Hey, what was that about? Do you know them?" He says, "No, I don't know them." Well, we walk, and about 5 minutes goes on, and I say to the guy, I'm not gonna list his name in here, obviously. I'll call him John Doe. I say, "Hey, John, do you have everything in your pocket?" So he searches his pockets. He had his wallet. He had his phone. He had his pocket knife. But he had some loose cash in his back right pocket. They had managed to pickpocket him. They picked him off because he was an easy target. They asked him the random question. He immediately stopped exactly what he was doing, gave enough positioning where the first one approached him from the front, and the other two, one came from a left angle, one came from a right angle, and they kind of surround him in a sense. It's just something that you kind of need to pay attention to. If someone is going to talk to you, even if it's just someone asking for directions, you can give them directions, you can give them any information that you actually need to give them without sitting there and stopping immediately. Because if you stop somewhere where they can get on your back, they can take stuff from you, or they can approach you in a manner where you would be at the disadvantage, then you're already losing half of the fight. Circle off, keep walking, make sure you maintain eye contact where you can actually see what they are doing, but never stop. Never get in a position where it's harder for you to defend yourself.
So the lesson there is don't trust women. I'm kidding.
Yes.
I know,
But
but
no,
like
I still give the
that's the
guy
thing.
I still
In
give the
front
guy
of you,
fits for it.
yeah, I mean, yeah, but like if someone's in front of you trying to talk, that's one thing. Okay, like it's still probably best if you don't prolong that conversation. That's one thing. If someone is behind you or next to you, I don't give a shit what the conversation is. If someone you don't know is coming up and just standing behind you in the middle of a fucking road, you get the fuck out of there.
And what makes it worse is we can't really say as martial artists, well, that wouldn't happen to me. I trained to defend myself. We can't really say this. John Doe, my buddy in this situation, he had been training for I think 5 years at this time, 5 or 6 years. Like he's a decent martial artist. I mean, I when I view him, I can say he's a decent martial artist. He's not great. He's not horrible. He's a decent martial artist. He is competent with defending himself.
Don't be
After,
nice to people.
after the fact, I still give him fits on this because he thinks about it now and he just kind of slaps himself and he says, I should look I should have known what was going on in this situation. There's no reason she should have came up to me asking about Jello and her two friends should have walked up. He said there's probably a third friend who walked by and that's how they got the money. But he learned from it. If you ever have something bad happen to you, learn from the lesson.
Like,
Don't
here's
sit
my
there
I
and
am
just
always doing my best to have as much awareness. Even if it's raining, I will rarely put my hood up. If I have headphones, I will only ever have one in, and it will not be at full volume. Like, you just got to do these small things so that you can have just a little bit of awareness of what's going on around you. And a lot of people say it's like maybe a little bit over the top. You're being a bit paranoid, but like shit does happen. Even if it's not you're getting mugged, you need to be aware of like the streets you're crossing and things like that. You know.
So another thing is respect your bubble. Basically, everyone kind of has this bubble where they're comfortable with people being around them, and then once they get too close, they're invading your bubble, and it's just a personal preference for how big that bubble is. But always respect your bubble. If someone you don't know is getting too close to you that you're feeling uncomfortable, walk away. Keep them within your or outside of your bubble. Like, no one should feel ashamed for wanting to stay comfortable and safe. People might go, "Oh, but that's rude." Who fucking cares? Your life is far more valuable than being polite to someone you may never see again.
one thing that
Especially
I've
now with like social distancing. Like that I remember when the pandemic first started, there were these shirts for like martial artists, and it was like if I can kick you in the chest and you're too close to me, social distancing.
so one thing I've heard about that is it's not a horrible idea. All right. I've heard this for a couple years now, and the more I think about it, I can see where it could do a lot of good. I really can, but it's a bluff. So you guys have heard me say before that a good bluff is better than a bad mistake. It kind of sets you apart. If someone is getting way too close to you, I've heard several individuals claim that if you step back, but instead of stepping back in a squared stance, step back in a bladed stance, pulling your dominant hip away from them and ask them to back up. Your reasoning for this is when they view that, we live in an age where everybody watches videos and television, right? What do they associate anytime someone steps away in a bladed stance and hides that hip?
Firearm,
They associated
at
it
least
with,
for you guys.
oh my gosh, they're drawing a weapon. That's what
Yeah,
everyone thinks about. If you do this to someone who thinks, oh, this is an easy target, you say, excuse me, back up, and you turn that hip away, they immediately think, oh, he has a weapon. I may not need to do this. Do you know who applies this more often than anybody else? Mall cops. A lot of mall cops do not have a firearm, but if they turn their hip away from you, you don't know if they have a firearm or not. They're using their body to hide it. So you associate it with, oh Lord, he's about to draw something. Apply this to your self-defense. Someone gets really close to you, excuse me, sir, back up, and you put that hip away, you've immediately taken yourself from threat level 1 to a threat level 10 in their eyes. When they look at you, they're not viewing you as this is an easy target. Instead, they're looking at you and they're feeling, sorry, sir, I did not mean to bother you. And more often than not, they will leave you alone. But I have I have the great privilege of being able to turn that hip away, and if that doesn't deter them, I can still draw something because America.
yeah. So that's in media and psychology. That's called Gardner's cultivation theory, and it's because we see that so much on the news, in films, whatever. It becomes part of our actual mentality growing up. It cultivates into society so that we know when that happens, that's the immediate thing we associate it with. Because even if we've never seen it happen in real life, we've seen it happen enough on the screen.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of when I was talking about how, like, every time I get in my car, I immediately lock all the doors. not because anything has happened to me or I know anyone who's had anything happen to them, but I've seen enough of those movies or like reenactments where, mostly horror movies, where, the woman gets in, doesn't lock all of her doors because it's kind of a weird thing. And, a guy sneaks in the back and then like cuts her throat from the back seat.
That that's a really interesting. What did you call this, Luca?
Gerbner's cultivation theory.
Gerbner's cultivation theory. All right, so you guys know I was in a very bad wreck a couple years back, right? Very lucky I didn't die. I
Yeah.
sent you pictures of the vehicle. I've experienced this before. That applies to a lot. This has taken up a little bit of the time, but it is something worth mentioning. I was in a very bad wreck. As soon as we had the accident, we get out, and what's the first thing on our mind? When you're watching a movie, what happens when someone gets in a wreck?
It blows up.
It blows up. So we panicked getting out of the vehicle because we thought, oh, shit, this thing's going to light on fire and blow up. That's interesting. I'm going to have to remember that. That may be worth making a full post on.
Yeah, it would definitely be worth looking into and seeing how else it can affect us in martial arts and self-defense.
Yeah, definitely like misconceptions, things that, aren't actually threats, but we think are, or things that we think are good, you know, uh, offensive maneuvers that are actually just really dumb.
Not even that, just like most people's opinions on martial arts that they've never done probably come from seeing it in films. That's cultivation theory.
That's a good point.
That's another example. What of most people, even martial artists who train weapons retention and similar aspects of martial arts, what do they feel happens whenever someone gets shot?
Knockback.
Knockback. All right, this is a very rural area where wildlife management is kind of a big thing here. Knockback associated within movies is not really experienced to an extent. I've shot several larger calibers and several smaller calibers, and I've not experienced knockback with any of the games that I fired upon. I just thought that's something worth mentioning because that goes off of you see it in a movie, it begins to materialize within your thought process as this is what happens.
It actually, this reminds me of a thing, and this is probably going to come out really terrible, so I apologize. I was watching a comedian, and he was talking about how he is racist in his own defense because he won't fight Asian men because he thinks the moment he tries to fight them, they're going to pull some weird shit, and he's going to be on the floor wetting himself and have to go to the guy's dojo and stand there in a line doing fucking Gyakusuki H ni son for like 10 years.
That we have solved racism. That's why. Okay, so there's this parody video going around YouTube, right? So I cannot remember the YouTuber's name, but this man who is of Asian descent steps outside to take out his garbage, right? So he's taking the trash out, and a man begins to attempt to mug him, and this fly flies around his face. He starts swatting at it. Well, the man who was trying to mug him is white. Well, as the Asian man is sitting there swatting at his face, the white man looks at him. He says, "Wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. Do you know that? Do you know that kung fu?" Because he sees him swatting all around his face, and he thinks it's kung fu. That applies there, but it also goes hand in hand where the white man ends up the man who was mugging the Asian man ends up giving his own wallet to the Asian man so he will not get harmed. The Asian man, who does not know anything of martial arts, then picks up the wallet, puts it in his pocket, and walks off. He has it in his mind now that, hey, I can act like I know kung fu and get anything I want. He goes to another individual and attempts to mug him, talking like he knows kung fu and makes all these different threats, right? He does this, and it's a black man who immediately starts going what people would interpret as being ghetto towards him. Starts making all these remarks. Immediately, the Asian man backs down, gives his own wallet, and runs off, right? The black man seeing this immediately gets back on the phone. He says, "Oh my goodness, I just hustled somebody who tried to mug me." The media will reinforce these things that we will eventually interpret as this is the way it is. this is how it is, this is how it's going to work, this is how it's going to be applied. Our minds will play tricks on us a lot easier than we want to think.
So let's take this into some less fucked up areas now that we've just gone off on that little tangent. I think the overall point we can take from that is that when it comes to defending yourself in any sense, the psychology is the biggest part of that. And if you can psych them out in whichever way possible, whether that's just apologizing and making them back off because, oh, you're sorry, you don't want to fight them, they get their validation, or out aggressing them if that's the right situation, if you think that you can handle that, because I wouldn't recommend it. If you can out aggression them and make them back off, or just make them act like you're bigger, bring your chest, puff your chest out and talk with confidence and make them think that you are a threat to them if they try and be a threat to you. You psych them out and they back off because they have stuff in their head that'll make them think certain ways, and you just need to play on that to keep yourself safe. Okay, so we've gone a bit on about general self-defense. Should we move on to the topic of home defense?
Lock your doors, lock your windows.
I mean, that's fair.
Lock your doors and windows. The first thing I'd like to bring up on that is posted signs. So going off of personal experiences, right? We have myself. My family owns a decent amount of land in a local area about 45 minutes from where I live, right? This area, we have fencing going around our whole property and we have it gated off. Reason being, no one else needs to be there. We recently found out if someone is on there, on the land, and they begin to hunt, say they climb a tree stand, fall out, and they get hurt, we can be held legally accountable. If I find someone on the land and I confront them about it, and an altercation takes place, I end up hurting them, I can be held accountable because there was no sign saying no one needs to be on this land. If there is a pond and someone goes into the pond and drowns, I can be held accountable. Posted signs are your best friend. If you go to defend yourself and someone is on your property, be it you're outside your home, someone goes to attack you, you're on your property, and you end up hurting them, that is a step that people can take to try getting something out of you. You need to have the signs there that say no trespassing, no fishing, no hunting. Because if you don't, it's a risk that you're taking. It's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it.
So if you live on a farm, make sure you write people get the fuck out. This is for animals only.
No, it's really just in general. Like, a lot of people around here will keep a tree or two in their front yard because it looks nice. Put a sign up saying no trespassing. That way, if they are coming onto your property, they're not supposed to be there. They had to see that sign coming into your property. Now, if
that is actually an interesting rule. My only thing about that would be the people that applies to probably don't have Wi-Fi to watch podcasts.
You're an asshole. Yeah, it's something to think about. Now, again, it will be different if someone has physically put themselves inside your home. Be it they broke the lock, they forced themselves in, etc. They have put themselves inside your home. They were not invited in. They are breaking and entering. Then you can defend yourself if your life is at stake. You see a reason to defend yourself. That is fine. But if you were defending yourself in your yard, for example, you end up hurting them, even though you could be in the right, if there's no posted sign, that's a risk that you were taking. That's something to bring up. That's something to mention. That's something to remember.
So in terms of defending yourself in your actual home, before we went on this podcast, I actually looked up the laws for the UK on that. And the government law in the UK for defending yourself in your home is defend yourself to a reasonable amount. And it says on the government website, there is no exact definition of what reasonable means in this case.
So that'll bring us on to our next point, which is it goes hand in hand with this because they say defend yourselves to a reasonable extent, right?
Yeah.
All right. The next very large topic point, the use of force continuum. Do both of you know what that is?
Yep. You've been saying you're going to make a video on it for like half a year now.
Yes. So the use of force continuum is how much force you can apply in a standard situation. If Masa here, all 7 foot of her, goes to mug me, right? Little old me. Masa here tries to mug me. Say she doesn't have a weapon. She says, "Give me your money." What would be a reasonable extent for me to defend myself? What methods could I take?
Probably roll her down a hill. I don't know, like, I don't know. She's kind of short. You could like pick her up.
Rude.
He's just going for violence today.
Also, I
So
will say I'm very good at preventing people from picking me up.
I mean, you've had years of practice.
laughs in judo. Okay, so if she has no weapon, my primary options are going to be de-escalation or defending myself with my hands, right? Because if I pull a gun and I shoot Masa 5 times in the chest when all she was doing was saying, "Hey, you're a poo-poo head." Who's in the wrong there?
I mean, really, it depends what state you're in. I'm sure Texas would be on your side.
That's fair. So I need to defend myself to an extent that is on the level of what she is doing or below. I don't really need to go from a level 1 up to a level 10 in this situation. If Masa pulls a knife, I'm allowed to go 1 above it. Meaning if she has a knife, I can either defend myself with my hands, which is a shit idea. Don't ever try to just grab a knife. Don't. It doesn't end well. You can disarm it if you're just god tier, but most of us aren't. I'm not. I like doing disarms, but I'm not going to try tangling with a knife. If they ask me for my wallet, I'll give them a wallet. If she has a knife, I can defend myself with my hands. I can defend myself with a knife, with a baton, with pepper spray, or I can use a firearm. In this situation, anything above a knife, I can use a firearm. The main thing, though, is if you have someone here who is just speaking ill towards you, there's no reason for you to pull a firearm. You stay relatively in the same ballpark of the threat. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Now, this brings me back to a conversation I had. I think it was with a practitioner of Krav Maga. And they were saying that if someone were to grab your shoulder, your arm, your wrist, your immediate response should be to rush them with flurries of attacks until they end up on the ground, as opposed to try and escape from that grab. And one of the things when we were talking about it that you brought up was the use of force and whether or not that would be considered reasonable to if someone just grabs your arm to immediately like try and knock them unconscious or whatever such response may be. So, what do you guys think about that?
This brings up a personal account that I can bring up. So, years ago, when I was but a wee lad, my family took a vacation, right? So, we went to this amusement park. We went to an exhibit that had lots of different animals that you were able to look at through the glass, right? Almost like a zoo. So, my younger sibling, my little brother, he had went to look at the different lizards in a very specific area, right? My
Yeah.
father, when it became time for him to look for my younger brother, went looking around and he found this child who was wearing a black baseball hat, like my brother was, and the same exact color shorts and the same exact color shirt. You know how a parent a lot of times will nudge their kid to come on?
Did your dad grab the wrong kid?
Yes, my father grabbed the wrong kid, and it was just for a split second. Like he grabbed the kid, and he immediately realized, started apologizing to the kid's parents, apologized to the kid, and like they understood it because dad was looking for his child, and my brother ended up being like right across from that kid. So they were able to see, hey, they're dressed exactly the same. If that would have immediately happened when my father mistakenly went to get the wrong kid, who would have been in the wrong? my father for making a mistake and grabbing the wrong kid, even if it's just for a split second, or if his father would have flipped out and immediately started trying to swing.
I don't know. Like, I understand
It's
the
a rough
point you're trying to
situation.
make, but when it comes to grabbing a kid, you can't know that it's just a mistake. And my immediate response, if I had a kid and someone tried to grab them, would probably be to swing.
I don't know if I would
You
swing
admit-
immediately, but
you
based on
look at the
statistics that I've
target before
seen. Oh, sorry.
you look at the target before you throw a punch, right? You're not punching randomly, right? If
Well,
someone
yeah.
touches them and then immediately lets go, I am so sorry, just like that, oh, it was a mistake. That's my point entirely.
Okay, yeah, that makes more sense. Yeah, but I mean, in my personal opinion, whenever someone puts a hand on you, you should immediately treat that as a threat. But how do you respond to the different levels of the threat? Do you immediately, no matter what it is, as long as it's a threat, try to attack? Well, Combat Connection viewers, we have been joined by a friend of ours, Beast King. Beast, welcome to the conversation. You're only like an hour late, but Low is like 2 hours late, so he's one of the and he's one of the owners. So we'll give you slack.
Yeah, I'm fashionably late. Yeah. Good evening.
Beast, since you just hopped in, before we continue our conversation, when you tell the viewers your martial arts experience and where you're going to be coming from for the rest of this conversation.
All right. So my martial arts experience is Muay Thai, which I did for about, I guess, close to a year, and for the last, I guess, 2 to 3 years, I've been doing Sanda based in Northern Long Fist.
Nice. So you do a lot of kickboxing. No real martial art. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I was gonna say we have been down this road before.
All right. So back to the topic at hand then. So yeah, I think, in my personal opinion, if someone touches you, it's a safe bet for you to assume that you're going to be in danger, but you don't know the context, so don't throw hands at them immediately. But if someone grabs you, I think that is possibly different than like that, because that's more aggressive. So, but what do you guys think?
So, I run a school down here.
Yeah.
Right? The main thing that I teach my guys is guard assumption. So when someone is immediately touching you, you can break if it's a wrist grab, which I don't really like the idea of, hey, we need to sit here and drill wrist escapes for an hour, 2 hours. No, you can understand the basics of it and make it apply within the situation. But if you have someone who immediately grabs your shoulder, you need to turn to face them. I teach my guys that instead of just immediately swinging, get an open-handed guard. You like a like an ude uke, right? So your standard middle block that you see in all these different styles of karate and taekwondo and a lot of other systems as well. I teach my guys to do that with both arms, like a kosoke, but pull in the front and open your palms up facing them. That way you're actually assuming a guard, but it looks like, hey, I don't want any issues, which is understandable if someone touches you by mistake. That way it is socially accepted if it was a mistake, you're just showing your hands, hey, because you're surprised. But if they're touching you on purpose, they're wanting to swing on you, you immediately have a guard to react with. That way, it's kind of like a safety net of sorts. If someone touches you by mistake, you're not immediately trying to cave in their face. But if they touched you on purpose, you're immediately ready to react to whatever's thrown at you, and you can throw punches and strikes from this position, if that makes sense.
Yep. And I agree. I think you can get the basics of a wrist grab pretty quickly. It's as simple as turn your wrist to the thumb and push out from there, because breaking one is easier than breaking many. But we do drill it a lot in specifically my Kempo at the beginner level, but that's meant to be an introduction to grappling, because the way my Kempo system works is the beginner level only lasts a couple of months, and it's an evolution of you get this fundamental at this belt, and then this fundamental at this belt, and at this belt you start to bring the fundamentals together and then upgrade it more and more until you have a full system where it's fully functioning. I think the idea, personally, when it comes to someone grabbing your arm, your shoulder, your wrist, I think the first thing I want to do is assess the situation, and to do that, I'm going to break out so that I can move backwards and get in a guard. I'm not going to immediately turn and strike because I don't know what's happening, so I want to create that distance. And besides, if someone is grabbing me, I don't want them grabbing me, so I want to get out of that if I don't know their intention, you know?
Yeah. Might I ask what context we're under for the situation? So is this like, out in the
Literally, so
public?
you don't know what's happening. Someone has just randomly grabbed your arm, your wrist, your shoulder.
Oh, all
You
right.
don't
Yeah,
know
no.
if you don't know if it's someone who is basing out before they throw a strike, and you don't know if it's someone who is grabbing you mistakenly thinking you're someone else.
All
Or
right.
say like you dropped something and they're trying to like, get your attention to give it back. It could be literally anything.
Yeah, that's fair. I think probably just some experience, but the best route to go is not to obviously answer with immediate aggression. I mean, now even where I am currently, while there is issues, chances are, 50-50, you'll probably be fine. They're probably just trying to get your attention for something. I don't think there's any need for, especially a high guard or anything. I'd probably, if I had my hands in my pockets, I'd definitely take them out, while I'm turning around to see what's going on, but I wouldn't really have, a guard up at all.
Okay, so let's make this a little less ambiguous. Say you've just been arguing with someone, like a heated vocal argument, and then they grab you and you turn to walk away.
Then I believe that goes into what we talked about earlier. Saying, hey, please back up, and turning your hip away. Now, if you know them, if you're very close to them, they could know this guy's bullshitting me, he doesn't have a weapon. But they could think this man's about to pull a knife, this man's about to pull a gun, I'm about to die. Or immediately back away, say, hey, back up. Get your hands in a defensive posture while showing your palms. You could be recorded. If you make a fist, you look aggressive. If your hands are open, you look non-aggressive. Even if you're in an argument, don't let yourself give in to the temptation of, hey, I want to lay this guy out.
So you wouldn't say that someone grabbing your arm is immediate cause, like is starting a fight. It's not immediate cause to retaliate with strikes or throws.
Like, I could see your reasoning before immediately trying to defend yourself, but me personally, I would not. If someone grabs my wrist, I'll try to slap escape and create distance. So training, I train because I like hitting people. I enjoy it. I like teaching people to hit people. I like choking people. I like training with people who like to choke people. Makes sense? I do this shit because I enjoy it. I don't want to sit there brawling all day. If there's any way I can end an altercation with non-aggressiveness, I will go for that 9 times out of 10. If someone grabs me, I'm immediately going to try to break the grip. I'm going to get my hands up where I can defend myself. I really don't swing unless I see an immediate threat, being it a strike being thrown at me, someone trying to charge, or someone trying to reach for something. That's just how I view it.
So at what point, which movement would you say is someone starting a fight?
Anything telegraphic in nature.
So if someone gets in their own guard?
If someone gets in their own guard, I'll maintain a guard until they pull back to throw a punch. If I see that shoulder shrug, they get ready to throw it, I immediately try to defend them.
So if they throw a strike, if they get in their guard, then you get ready to defend. And if they attack, then you start to react as when it's a fight.
That's how I view it.
Okay, what if someone pushes you?
If someone pushes me, I get into that guard. I show my palms.
Because that's something people say often. A lot of martial arts, like self-defense advice YouTubers, they'll say, especially for like school fights, like if someone pushes you, like the immediate thing you do is like you grab their arms and start pulling them and trying to like get a shoulder throw and stuff like that.
That's fine for training. It's a fun drill to train, but okay, so I've trained a lot of kids over the past couple of years, and schoolyard fights are almost always just either arguments or a bully. If someone pushes them, I immediately teach them, hey, someone pushes you, you immediately show your palms, you get a stable position with your feet so you can react to what comes next. Because when they see that, even though your hands are open, you're in a stable position. If they try anything else, you are more likely to be able to defend yourself. So these kids, I will tell them, hey, just get your hands open, show the palms. If they go to touch you again, then you are able to defend yourself. If they push you, you were technically able to throw something in defense. They have caused physical contact, which in turn is it's giving you justifiable reason to defend yourself. But I like to be sure because a lot of people get heated in arguments. You can be arguing with someone and they can shove you. If you immediately get that guard, the teachers a lot of times will start looking then. And if they don't, they don't. But if the teacher sees, hey, they got their hands up, they're showing their palms, they're not really doing anything bad. But if that person who just pushed you goes to swing or goes to charge, you're in a good position to react. If they swing, just punch them first. If they go to charge, Tawara Gaeshi, just slam them down. Do whatever you can.
People really underestimate how good a defensive posture with your palms up can really be as a guard. Like, if you have it right, your hands are right next to your head, so you can easily move to defend your head, and then they're also covering your ribs.
Well, you know what guard is primarily used in Muay Thai Lord Red, right?
Yeah.
Do a Thai guard, open your palms.
Yeah, I was just going to
Basically, yeah.
mention that. Yeah, like, it's actually perfect for that situation. I mean,
Because
literally that.
your palms are about even with your eyes. You have them in front where you can see through, you can catch anything. You can throw punches at about 25% extension, right? So you're ready to throw right there. Your elbows are in line around with your shoulder. So you can throw your elbows. You can use your elbows to wing block, just parry anything you want. It's a relatively safe position.
I have two opinions when it comes to pushing. I have an opinion if you're alone, an opinion if you're with people. If you are on your own and someone's arguing with you and pushing you, say you're at a store or something and someone's got heated, or you're at a bar or at work or something and someone's got aggressive and someone started pushing you, I think you can still try and de-escalate there, but be ready in case they try more. If you're with people, say you're with your friends or your family and you're like the biggest one out of the group there, I wouldn't take the chance. If they are starting to get aggressive in that sense and they've made physical contact, and you have people that if you don't react and you get hurt, they could get hurt, then you respond.
So I remember being at a party. This is a couple years back. This was at one of my best friends growing up houses, right? There was a lot of different guys there that we were all about the same age. And there was this one guy who wanted to start fights with everybody. And I got shoved around a fire at a campfire. And immediately I just got into a solid base and showed my palms. I was just standing there. He thought I was immediately going to try swinging, but I didn't. I just stood there. And the guy kept shit talking at this range. I'm sitting there in a stationary position. I have my hands up. I'm ready to do whatever I need to do. And the guy's shit talking. And my buddy runs about 20 yards because he saw what happened. He runs immediately over and talks this guy down because this guy did not know me, didn't know me in the slightest. He just talked a lot of shit and I didn't like hearing it. And I just told him, hey, maybe you shouldn't talk that much. It's kind of rude and you don't know what you're talking about. So my buddy runs up. We'll give him the same name as earlier, John Doe, even though it's a different individual. He runs up and he immediately starts talking him down. And the guy keeps cursing. He says, no, I'm about to lay this mother effer out. And he explains to them, he says, no, 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 you're not. You're not. You don't need to do this. And he keeps asking why and cursing me out. And I'm just standing there. And he explains to him, he says, no, he's about to lay you out. No, he's not. And he keeps cursing. He says, no, you see, this is what he does for fun. He goes and he trains at a gym like 4 times a week. He just fights. So if you go to touch him again, he's going to hurt you a lot. And I don't want the party to stop, so please just stop. He ended up talking the guy down. But if I would have immediately swung, it would have ruined all of our fun. It's something to talk about.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, no, going
Okay.
back towards that school analogy, you know what, podcast now. I'm not gonna say what part of Baltimore. I'm just gonna say here, you know, you don't have to cut this out. I am in Baltimore. The fact of the matter is, growing up, like, if you're in school and it is a group situation, how do I put this in a respectful, PC manner? If they shove you and they are in a group and the group is in their favor, shut them down. That's always kind of been my experience. You know, even if you don't have to throw the first, like, obviously don't throw the first punch, let them come at you. But, like, if they follow up from that point, shut them down as quickly, efficiently as possible. Because my uncle always used to tell me, the loudest dog is always a bitch. And that's the same thing for most gangs, really, honestly. If their ringleader shut down immediately, then chances are they're not going to do anything. And from there, it can be diffused. Obviously, don't go ham, don't go putting anybody on the necks, but if you're able to shut it down as quickly as possible, then that's probably the best route.
If they have a group with them, that's an entirely different situation. If someone is coming at you and they want to start a fight with you for whatever reason, that's probably some sort of social situation, and they have a whole like crew of people just like watching and waiting, and some of them might jump in. Take them down, just lay them out. Hopefully, everyone else backs off.
That goes into an account that I have from one of my training partners. He's a really talented martial artist. He got to start in Kempo, but he primarily does boxing and Filipino martial arts now. And he's done some jiu-jitsu. So you've heard me talk about him before, Luca, my pack instructor.
Yeah.
He worked as a bouncer whenever he got out of the military, and in between jobs, he worked as a bouncer. He explained to me an altercation he had one time where I can't remember the exact number, but it was a number of individuals were starting trouble with him outside of a bar. And this was fairly recent, so he wasn't a young guy, to say the least. He was older. He said these were all younger men that wanted to start something with him. And there was a group of them. So they're starting this. His first thoughts are, all right, I'm about to get hurt. Because he knows that he's a good martial artist, but in his mind, he's an older guy. He can't physically keep up with them because age does play a number to an extent. So he decided he was going to try something. He was going to try to play something psychologically. He wanted to get in their heads and kind of deter them from actually starting something to begin with. So they're all sitting there and they're trash talking him and they're being very rude. And I believe two of them were armed. But that's neither here nor there. Anyways, they're starting a situation and immediately he just kind of starts rolling his shoulders, getting real loose. He says, all right, I'll go ahead and tell you, there's a lot of you. I'm going to the ER tonight. He says, you guys have me beat. You're going to hurt me. But I'm letting you know right now, the first one of you that steps forward, I'm going to try my best to kill you right now. He said that kind of just startled him for a second. They kept shit talking him. But he noticed none of them stepped forward. This went on for a bit before it kind of got dissipated. But it made him think. He said something to them that made them think, hey, I don't want to be the first person to step forward because there's a chance I'm going to die. People want to live. People want to sit there and hurt someone who looks like an old man, but as soon as they think, hey, maybe I can get really severely hurt and maybe die, then they don't want to do it. So that plays on the psychological aspect we talked about earlier, that make them think it is less of an opportunity if they step forward to begin with.
And that's something we talked about earlier when it comes to whether you should back down or whether you should try and sort of psych them out and be out aggression them, as it were, like whether you should back down or double down.
Yeah, honestly, I think like no matter the context, if nothing else, even if you're trying to, you know, purely be on the defensive, make sure body language wise it shows, you know what I mean, that you're not going down easily. Even, you can say it verbally as well, but,
We
just
talked about this. We talked
emphasize
about
that
this
fact,
earlier before you joined Beast King.
Ah, all right.
That's one of
I
the
think
top points.
if it is your job, if you're a bouncer, you can't back down. You have to double down, which means one thing, you need to be sure that you can at least back up when you're doubling down, back it up when you're doubling down a little bit. Like it is, I think doubling down if you do not have the capacity is a terrible idea. But then again, by that, being a bouncer if you don't have any fighting capacity is a terrible, terrible idea.
True.
This is fair.
So
Yeah.
what are, other than if it's your job, what other situations you guys think it might be more beneficial to double down than back down?
Abductions. If you're with an individual, someone is trying to abduct them, you are defending another individual.
So if you're protecting someone, then yeah, you don't have the. I mean, yeah, if you've got actually physical items are something you can afford to lose. I don't care. It's your phone, it's your wallet, whatever. You can afford to give that over. If you're protecting someone, then you have that responsibility there.
Yeah, I think environment is also like a very large factor. Like if you're somewhere where it's just you and nobody else, and it's one on one, then by all means, whatever decision you make is up to you. You can definitely double down. Then just environment is a huge factor, I guess, for any scenario, but especially for that. And I guess that also kind of goes into like knowing the terrain as well. Like, not everything works in the same area, especially depending on how you choose to defend yourself as well.
That goes. So, situations where that would be needed. If you were with a child and someone grabs the child, it's not by mistake, and they begin to leave with the child, you can't really back down at that point. That would be one situation.
Yeah.
Another situation being if you were with an individual, not a child, but someone tries to abduct them, you're not really going to be able to, hey, you stop that. There's not going to be enough time for that. You're going to have to immediately make action.
Yeah.
That's another thing.
A possible mugging situation as well is like another outcome where I can see, doubling down. Well, depending on if they're
Or
on or not.
if you were in a building, for example, and say here in the US, people have firearms. Say someone breaks into the building or just walks into the building and they open fire. Say they pull a firearm, they start hurting people. They start shooting people, and all of a sudden, you find yourself in a position where you could stop the threat. All right? You're not really going to be able to back down at that point. You have the option. If you are confident that you can, and you feel like you are serving the greater good, then I don't really see a way to back down from there.
Yeah, I feel like that's definitely a 50-50. I mean, on one hand, yes, you could end the terror and the threat immediately right at that point, but I mean, it's distance as well. You know what I mean? It doesn't really take a lot to just turn in the direction you're in and pull the trigger.
Yeah, for example, say you're in a grocery store. Someone comes in, they start shooting. They are creating an act of terrorism, right? They are killing individuals, innocent lives. Say you are one of the individuals who is a concealed carrier, or you're an off-duty police officer, or an off-duty military member. You see that they are shooting people. You are taking cover just like everyone else is. If you were in a position where they are looking elsewhere, attempting to shoot elsewhere, and you have your firearm on your side, you draw the firearm. If you shoot them, you are ending their one life to save the lives of many. I don't see the point in backing down at that point.
Oh yeah, no, I totally agree. I just thought if you meant like if you're completely unarmed, you're gonna go tackle them is what I thought.
Yeah, like there's videos that you can find on YouTube of people taking down gunmen. And more
Yeah.
often than not, it's when they're not paying attention.
Yeah, and like all right, I guess this is a bit of a personal story, but I'll share it nonetheless. I suppose. Like I went to a middle school that was almost shut up. I forgot what year this was, but yeah, middle school a couple years back. So yeah, no, there was a gang at the school that had their way with a lot of the girls there, and one of the fathers figured, he didn't. I guess he figured he didn't have anything left to live for. I don't really know the situation regarding him, but he decided to come and try and air the place out, if you will. And our local county officer, managed to catch him off guard as he was coming in, and tackled him down and all that. Which props to him. Because I don't even know how that would have gone. That was a very compact school. He could have aired that place out in a matter of minutes, really. Yeah.
Damn, that's a dark situation.
Well, I mean, I personally, me and a lot of my friends, this is another tip, is, these things, little tips here, wherever building you go to, this is just a personal thing I was always taught to do, whether it's school, whether it's church, whether it's work, know your exit. Know every exit in the room, you know what I mean? From the cafeteria to the classroom to the gymnasium to, I guess the back storage area of your job. Like, just always know your escape route. No matter, even if you are 100% sure nothing is going to go wrong. Because, like, with that situation there's no guarantee, you know what I mean? Like, it was so close, no call. And, yeah, but I remember at the time I was in, library? Yeah, right next to the exit doors. The minute I heard that, I'm at 7-Eleven. The Mountain Dew and probably Krispy Kreme.
Another one that's maybe a little more relatable to the average person. Lo, you do this a lot, is like elderly relatives.
That's a good point. Continue.
So, like, if you are with an elderly relative and you're helping them with day-to-day tasks, something like that, taking them to the store or whatever, there's a high chance that someone will find them to be a vulnerable target because they are elderly. So you're going to need to be prepared at that point to step in because you are not.
So on that part of it, if you were with an elderly relative and you were within their immediate circle, you, in that case, are the deterrent. So it's up to you to pick up the slack and to appear to be something that's non-vulnerable. Because by association, you are serving as a shield for them.
And I've seen this one go around a lot. This is not, so it's not someone you know, but say you're in a public area and you see a female who is being, seems to be in a conversation with a male or anyone is and she seems to be uncomfortable or trying to get away from it. Stepping in at that point, probably better than trying to back away if you have the capacity.
So that's fair. A couple weeks back, well, about a month now, I almost hurt someone within a hardware store. So there was this little bitty old lady at the checkout, right? So this little bitty old lady's at the checkout. She's trying to check out, and this huge man, big redheaded guy, runs up to her and grabs her purse. So immediately, I drop everything I have. I'm about to tackle this guy. I'm about to hurt him. I was gonna do more than tackle, but you understand. I was about to act on the matter. I didn't even think I was about to react on this, and she immediately starts laughing. So I stop myself. I look at it, and she knew him. He was doing it as a joke. I was gonna step in, possibly harm this guy for good. And she knew this guy. They were joking about this. He did it as a joke for her.
So that's more a thing of be aware if you're going to step in on someone's situation of what the situation is. Like, I remember this one case, a lot of people were stepping in. So I was on the bus, and I was on buses around here. They have 2 floors, and I was on the top floor. And the bus stopped. There was a lot of commotion from the bottom floor. We go down, and it seemed it seemed to everyone that this man had tried to steal this woman's purse. They had heard the commotion between the two, the argument, heard the word like thief, steal, whatever, assumed that the guy was stealing from this woman. Other way around, but this dude kind of got rushed.
Yeah. I will say with the initial, how do I go? Yeah, the initial, dang, I'm forgetting the word. The initial scenario you mentioned with the whole, girl feeling uncomfortable thing. I will say one thing is that always be cautious. Things are not always as they appear to be. For a situation like that, you obviously never go in flinging common sense, but be mindful of how you portray yourself, both in a physical sense and how your just overall emotion and level headed.
Yeah, I mean, also it's a common scam where people often have the female work in a group, have the female pretend to need some form of help, so that then they can, when you try to help and you're distracted, one or two more guys can knock you down and take your shit.
Like
But
we talked
I
about
think,
earlier with my friend John Doe.
yeah, like what you were saying earlier. So I think what people need to be aware of is it's it is best if you have the capacity to step in a situation and resolve it. It's a good idea too, but you need to be aware of the situation you're stepping into. Don't put yourself in harm's way that you can't handle in order to get someone else out of possible harm's way that you are not entirely sure about. Like if someone is throwing hands on someone and they are clearly just beating the ever living fuck out of someone in the middle of the street and they have no way of defending themselves, they are just getting completely obliterated. It might be a good idea if you are capable of like getting between it. If you are someone who is fight capable, make sure like trying to be like pull them away or stand between or just call someone, police, whatever. But that does not apply to everyone. You need to use your head, know yourself, and know what is around you.
Yeah, like a personal tip I have for that actually exact scenario is not to go over there and say like, hey, what's going on or anything like that. Just ask for the time. Just like that's a simple interruption. Like no major overly aggressive body language. Just ask what time it is.
This man is on the floor getting his head caved into the pavement.
Oh no, not that situation. I meant like the girl. Not that. And if that's the case, just sidekick them into oblivion. But like what I'm saying is like the whole girl feeling uncomfortable scenario. Just ask for the time. Literally, that's all it takes. The time he responds to you, she could basically just run off. Or you can get a good feel for what the actual situation is and how it might progress from that point forward. But yeah, no, if they are beating the ever-loving piss out of someone, just, roundhouse, sidekick, do what you gotta do. Fuck them up.
I think unless the situation is explicitly violent, don't enter with aggression. Yeah, enter with caution and enter with be clever about it. Like you see a dude getting a little too like aggressive with a girl, and then you step in. You don't immediately just like start swinging on this dude because he's got like he's got a bad tone. You will get in between them and ask her if everything's okay. Try and talk to her, and then even if he's being rude to you, you kind of dismiss it, but you make sure that you have an eye on him because he might throw at you.
Yeah, that's kind of like what I was trying to get past. Like the whole, what's the time thing? Like that breaks whatever they had going, and he's, going to respond to you, and you can just see by his response and how he, responds to you, a general sense of how the situation is playing out with, between the two. If he's responding overly aggressive towards you, then you kind of got an idea what's going on. At least to a very minor extent. From there, you can, judge what to do from, pretty much from that angle, however you will.
And I will say, this is a podcast. This is a podcast by martial arts practitioners, targeted towards martial arts practitioners. We are talking under the assumption that if you are a viewer of this, you at least have some level of understanding of self-defense and social awareness in that sort of specific area, or at least some understanding of space or not getting hit. It is, in essence, if you are a normal person on the street, you cannot assume this. Obviously, like this will become a little more subjective towards you, but it's completely subjective anyway. Every situation is different. Use your head and make sure you are not getting involved in anything that will put people in more danger, including yourself.
Exactly, yeah. And just like going into that, even if you are a martial artist talking for the situation, like you're not Batman, okay? Realize no matter what martial art you do, no matter how good of a person you are, whether you're a master, a novice, or somewhere in between, you can't beat everybody. You simply
Yeah,
cannot.
thanks for that. Now all the Bujinkan practitioners are going to hate us. Like, he told us we're not Batman, but we have smoke grenades and shurikens.
I feel like Logan could probably sum that up pretty well. One shot to the head, you're pretty fucked. Get fucked. Like,
Two in the body, one in the head.
yeah, exactly. Like I think American Dad literally said it best. First rule of knowing karate: gun beats karate.
Also, no hate to Bujinkan. It's just a meme. We're not shitting on you.
Get good, scrub.
I mean, if you did a
joking.
better martial art, we wouldn't shit on. No, I'm kidding. Okay. So, anyone have any other thoughts on this area of self-defense, home defense, defending others, or anything else we have talked about this evening?
Yeah, I think that about covers all of what we have time for today.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching this episode of the Day Class Podcast on Combat Connections. If you like this episode, why not give us a like, subscribe, leave a comment, watch our podcast on our other podcasting platforms, watch our older episodes of the podcast, watch our other YouTube videos, follow us on Instagram at Combat Connection _co, follow our Facebook page, Combat Connections, and our TikTok, Combat Connections. And until next time, guys, keep training. Peace.